Good morning and welcome to Daily Red Devil for all of your latest Manchester United transfer news and talk. We're back with another show, bringing you all of the latest news. But before we get into that, please do me a small favour. Make sure to subscribe if this is your first time watching and give the video a like. God, I don't know where to start today. I just want to say as well, apologies I didn't do a match reaction last night after the Newcastle game. I just didn't feel like doing it, to be honest. I was like, it was just miserable, wasn't it? Let's talk about the Newcastle game, to be honest. Let's start the show off with that. I want you to get in the comment section now. Let me know your thoughts on last night's game. I don't really think there was any positives to take from it. Maybe Lenny Yoro, he was all right. I'm literally struggling here, you know? Midfield was awful. Casemiro and Eriksen, absolutely terrible. Dalot and Mazraoui, I thought were awful. Martinez was awful. Højlund, non-existent, as always. Ahmad, quiet, didn't really do anything. Yeah, it was just terrible, wasn't it? It wasn't... The thing is, right, if your team's playing attractive football and you lose narrowly or you get a dodgy VAR decision or something happens, then you kind of can accept it, can't you? But at the moment, it's like there's no entertainment level at all. At least under Erik ten Hag, right? Now, this isn't saying that we should have kept Erik ten Hag, but under Erik ten Hag, the football was entertaining. It was end to end. We were creating chances, but we were also conceding chances. Now we're conceding more chances, conceding more goals, but we're not scoring any goals. So it's like, it's just got worse. It has. And you know what? The more I think about this, like, obviously this isn't on Ruben Amorim because he's come out yesterday and said after the game that he doesn't have a plan B. The only plan he has is this 3-4-2-1. That's the only formation he knows. He doesn't do any other formation. So he's not just going to suddenly start playing a 4-3-3 because that's not a formation he's really familiar with. I'm sure he could do it, but like he said, I don't have a plan B. I have plan A and that's it. And this now makes me think, right? What did INEOS think was going to happen if you bring in a manager in the middle of a season when there's no training? He said on yesterday's press conference that he's only had 4 training sessions since he joined Manchester United in 6 weeks. Obviously, because of the amount of games we've had, because of Christmas, because of all of these things, right? We played a game on Boxing Day, didn't we? And then we play a game yesterday. I think a player has to have, I think it's either 2 or 3 days of clear rest. So if the players played last night, they can't train again until like Thursday this week. And obviously at the moment, the games have been happening like every 3 days. So there's been 4 training sessions in 6 weeks. But the point I'm making here is, what did INEOS really think was going to happen? To bring in a manager midway through a season without any training sessions, to play a new system with a bunch of players who could barely even play 4-3-3. I mean, this was bound to happen. And you know what? I can't see where we're going to get any wins from, because apparently the next time that we'll have like a clear break for training is in March, apparently. That's when the next international break is. And obviously that will only be players who don't go on international break. So like most of the squad will be gone. But yeah, I mean, like if you look at our fixtures coming up, right? We play Liverpool on this Sunday. So obviously the players can't train today. They can't train tomorrow. They'll probably train Thursday, Friday. So we'll get 2 training sessions this week, right? And then they'll play on Sunday. And then after that, they've got a whole week, which is great. So we have a whole week next week, but then we play Arsenal. So it's like the next 2 games, even though we'll have some training sessions, we're not going to, in 2 days, be able to coach this team to play this formation. So obviously the Liverpool games are right off realistically. Then you play Arsenal. And then after that, it just goes back to normal again. It goes back to a game every 3 days. So like these might be the only training sessions we get now until March, apparently. That was what was reported last night. So we'll have a couple this week and a couple next week, and then there won't be any training until March because of the amount of fixtures we have. Obviously, because we're still in the Europa League, so we'll be playing games every 2 to 3 days until March, which is absolutely mental. But that's just how it is in professional football of this standard. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know where Manchester United go from here, to be honest. I think obviously the fact that the transfer window opens tomorrow is a positive. And INEOS need to just be absolutely ruthless. They need to just completely clear out this squad. If they don't, God knows what's going to happen, to be honest. We're closer to the relegation zone now than we are to the top 4. I mean, I say closer, we're way closer to the relegation zone. Let's have a look at the table quickly. So at the moment, we are on 22 points. Fourth place Chelsea are on 35 points. So we're 13 points off top four. And we are 23 points off Liverpool, who are top of the table and have a game in hand on us. And we are currently only 7 points off relegation zone. But our next fixture is Liverpool. So, I mean, we're going to lose against Liverpool. If Crystal Palace win on the weekend, they go above us. If Everton win on the weekend, they would be 1 point behind us with a game in hand. We could easily be down to 16th, 17th in a couple of weeks' time, because we're not going to beat Liverpool, let's be clear. And then after that, we play Southampton at home. I mean, I'm not even joking here, right? I'm not even confident that we'll beat Southampton at home. I'm genuinely not. Because I have why would you be confident? We lost 3-0 to Bournemouth a couple of weeks ago. We lost 2-0 to Wolves. We lost 2-0 to Newcastle. We haven't scored a goal since we played Tottenham. And I saw a stat yesterday that since Mazraoui and Dalot have been playing at wing back, we haven't scored a single goal. Not one. And I think, I can't remember how many games it was, but it's just clearly not working. He needs to change it. And I think, everyone's very protective of Ruben Amorim. Fair enough, be protective of him. But he also should come under some criticism because I think yesterday some of the squad selection was very questionable. I think, you're playing Eriksen and Casemiro as your midfield two, who had a combined age, I think, of 64, coming up against Bruno Guimaraes, Joel Linton and Tonali. I mean, let's just examine that for a minute, right? A midfield of Casemiro, who's, I think, 33, 34 and completely past it, can barely even run anymore, and Eriksen, who's also completely past it. And you're coming up against Tonali, who is an absolutely unbelievable central defensive midfielder, Bruno Guimaraes, who's one of the best midfielders in the Premier League, and Joel Linton, who's an absolute beast. Those three up against Eriksen and Casemiro. I mean, it was clear to see that was never going to work, wasn't it? I mean, I'm not a football manager, but I could look at those two midfields and say that Joel Linton, Bruno Guimaraes and Tonali is going to completely dominate Eriksen and Casemiro, right? So maybe he could have done something different. Maybe Mainu should have started from the beginning. That probably would have been better. Maybe even Toby Collier should have played. At least he would have had the legs to run around the pitch, whereas Casemiro and Eriksen don't have that. So, we can protect Ruben Amorim. We can say, he needs time. Of course, I agree with all of that. But he should also come under some criticism because the squad selection yesterday, I know we have injuries. I know the squad isn't very good, blah, blah, blah. But still, I think we could have set up a little bit better yesterday. And the fact that, as I said, Mazraoui and Dalot clearly don't work as these wing backs. We're not creating enough chances. We saw the goal yesterday for Isak in the 4th minute, right? All it was the left back runs down the pitch, crosses the ball in, and it's an easy goal. Dalot and Mazraoui can't cross the ball. We never score from crosses. I don't remember the last time we scored a headed goal from a cross. I honestly can't remember the last time. I know when we had Luke Shaw in the team, we used to, didn't we? But yeah, I think, the selection yesterday was very questionable. I think Martinez is completely out of form. Dalot doesn't suit the left wing-back position. Mazraoui doesn't suit the right wing-back position. I actually liked Mazraoui as the right centre-back. I thought he was quite good there when he played there in the past. I mean, the whole team yesterday, honestly, and I'm not even being dramatic, the only player I would probably keep from the team that started yesterday is Ahmad. Honestly. Onana, sell. Martinez, sell. Maguire. I think Maguire's probably our best centre-back at the moment, but I'd still get rid of him. De Ligt, I think, is pretty average, to be honest. I don't think he's amazing. He's okay. Eriksen, passed it. Casemiro, passed it. Dalot, I think, is overhyped. Joshua Zirkzee, clearly not going to work in the Premier League. Højlund, I think Højlund's okay at a club like Manchester United if he's maybe the second or third choice striker. But to have Højlund as your main striker you're just setting yourself up to fail. I'm sorry, you are. When you're going up against a team like Newcastle, who haven't won a trophy of any kind in 20 years, and their striker Isak is absolutely levels above Rasmus Højlund. Let's be clear. Some people will say, but he's older, he needs time, blah, blah, blah. He's been here for 2 seasons, right? And I know it's not his fault, but if you look at the price that we paid for Rasmus Højlund versus what Newcastle paid for Isak, right? Isak to Newcastle was 70 million euros from Real Sociedad. And I remember at the time people were like, it's so much money. Real Sociedad have had them there. And then you compare him with Rasmus Højlund, right? You look at Rasmus Højlund's transfer to Manchester United, obviously from Atalanta. What was it, 2 seasons ago? I know he's younger, blah, 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 but we paid 74 million euros. We paid more money for Rasmus Højlund than Newcastle paid for Isak. And so far this season, if you compare the stats, Isak has got 12 goals and 4 assists in 17 Premier League games. Rasmus Højlund's got 2 goals in 14 games. I mean, it's completely uncomparable, isn't it? So, yeah, we're in, obviously, I think we're at rock bottom. Could it get worse? Probably, to be completely honest. I think it is going to get a lot worse from here. Obviously, the next two games are Arsenal and Liverpool. I can see someone in the chat saying Amorim is not yet to be criticised. Are you saying that we haven't criticised him yet, or are you saying that we shouldn't criticise him? I'm not sure what you mean, but I think every manager or player deserves criticism, regardless of, you know, whether they've been here a week, whether they've been here 6 weeks, because the fact of the matter is, right, you look at the team that set up yesterday and you compare it with Newcastle's team, you could tell from the off that Manchester United were not going to win that game. You know, who plays Casemiro and Eriksen as your midfield 2 against a midfield 3? So you're already outnumbered of Joel Linton, Tonali and Bruno Guimaraes. We all know that football matches are won and lost in the midfield, right? And we can all tell easily that a midfield 2 versus a midfield 3, you're already at a disadvantage. And it's not like you've got 2 world-class players playing as the midfield 2 for Manchester United. You've got Eriksen and Casemiro, who are absolutely woeful, up against probably, I would say that is one of the best midfields in the Prem at the moment. Bruno Guimaraes, Tonali and Joel Linton. That's an unbelievable midfield. I would take every single one of those players in a heartbeat. I would honestly take most of Newcastle's players in a heartbeat. I'd take Trippier. I'd take Lewis Hall. I'd take Dubravka over Onana. I'd take Anthony Gordon over Xerxes. I'd take Isak over Højlund. Jacob Murphy, I don't really know too much about, so I'm not sure if I'd take him. And I'd probably take Dan Burn and Fabian Schär over Martinez and Maguire, to be honest. Like, I would swap every single player that started for Man United yesterday with the players that started for Newcastle, honestly. And then, you know, but that just shows how bad our recruitment's been, hasn't it? Although some of these players have been here for quite a long time, haven't they? Obviously, Dallow's been here a long time. Maguire's been here a long time. Ahmad has. And then all of the rest of them were kind of summer signings, weren't they? But yeah, I don't know. I put out a tweet last night and I got a bit of stick for it. I was saying that, and obviously this maybe sounds a bit dramatic, but I was just trying to think yesterday, right? How do we get rid of these players? Because none of them have any personal pride. They're all just happy, sat there, earning their money. They don't care. They don't love Manchester United. They're not bothered. How do we get rid of them? Because no one's going to pay them the money that we're paying them. You know, no one's going to give Casemiro 350k a week. We'll talk about him in a minute, actually. You know, no one's going to give Harry Maguire 200 grand a week. Luckily, Maguire's contract expires in June, so he'll go. But Eriksen, he's going to go. So you can see in the next 12 to 18 months that this squad will start to be ripped apart. Like, if you look at the team here, Maguire and Eriksen are both out of contract in the summer, so those two will be gone. Casemiro, apparently he might be going to Saudi. We'll talk about that in a minute. You look at the rest of the team, right? Joshua Xerxes, he's obviously going to leave now after being cheered off the pitch yesterday, ironically, by the Manchester United fans. I mean, I've never seen that happen before. He was booed off the pitch after half an hour, which I thought was a bit harsh. I mean, he was absolutely awful. He was terrible, but so was every single player on that pitch for Man United. And I think, you know, the Man United fans cheering him and booing him off the pitch, it was more aimed at the whole team. It was kind of like an ironic thing. I don't think it was directly aimed at him. If Casemiro had been booed off if Casemiro had come off at that point, it would have been the same reaction, or if Eriksen had, or if Martinez had, I think. So, yeah, I don't think it was directly targeted at Joshua Xerxes, although he has been very poor since he joined. Yeah, how's everybody feeling? Like, I assume everyone's pretty frustrated at the moment. Let me just have a sip of my water quickly. Fred says, what do you think INEOS should do now? What should Manchester United do now? I don't know, to be honest. The way I see it, right, is unless they're going to completely gut this squad and sell probably 90% of the players, then it's not going to work with Ruben Amorim. It's not, because Ruben Amorim needs players to suit his system, and these players clearly don't suit this system. So hopefully INEOS are sat there this morning already working on deals to get rid of some of these players, you know? They're working on deals to get rid of people like Casemiro, Eriksen, Maguire, Joshua Zirkzee going back to Italy, Rashford leaving. Like, this needs to be happening this morning. Garnacho leaving if he's not going to be part of the first team squad, a world-class striker being signed, a midfielder being signed, like a left wing back, a right wing back. If they don't do these things, then it's not going to work, and Ruben Amorim will be sacked and we'll be back to square one. And it all just depends on what INEOS actually want to do. Maybe INEOS thought that he would come in and they'd quickly adapt to this back they'd quickly adapt to this 3-4-2-1 and everything would be fine. I think that's what they thought would happen. I would be honestly stunned if INEOS thought that Ruben Amorim would come in and we'd get worse. I honestly think that they imagined Ruben Amorim would join and everything would be fine, and they wouldn't have to spend much money, and they'd say, oh, we've invested heavily in the summer, blah, blah, blah. That's how I feel like INEOS would have planned with Ruben Amorim to be the manager. And it's obviously massively backfired, because it makes no logical sense to bring in a manager in the middle of a season when you can't train. It doesn't. It makes no sense at all. And I'll be honest with you, I was one of the people who wanted Ruben Amorim to come in now. I thought that it would be better than this. I thought that he'd be able to get a tune out of these players. You know, you look at what he did at Sporting Lisbon. I think he won 14 out of the last 15 games in a row. 14 wins in a row, including beating teams like Man City 4-1. Like, he did unbelievable things there, but it did take him 3 or 4 years to get to that point. You know, it wasn't an immediate success. And obviously Manchester United is a whole different ballgame. The media pressure, the fans, etc., etc. It's nothing like Sporting Lisbon. Sporting Lisbon is a drop in the ocean compared to Manchester United. So it's a massive, massive job for Ruben Amorim. But I think, if anything, the fault here lies on INEOS. They probably shouldn't have kept Erik ten Hag in the summer. It was absolutely illogical and dumb to keep a manager, give him a new contract, give him £200 million to spend on players, and then 2 months later to sack him. That's literally stupid. I'm sorry. That's completely stupid. They should have either said, you know what, Eric, we'll keep you till the summer and then we'll reevaluate, and he should still be the manager now. Or they should have sacked him in the summer, you know? Because otherwise, you know, if we're going off what INEOS did with Erik ten Hag, I'm being completely honest here, right? And this isn't what I want, but this is what INEOS did. If we're going off what INEOS did with Erik ten Hag, they should sack Ruben Amorim today, realistically. I'm not saying I want that. That's not what I want, just to be very, very clear. But I'm just showing you how stupid and idiotic INEOS are. You keep a manager just because he wins the FA Cup, right? Give him a new contract, massive amounts of money in wages. You give him £200 million worth of players, and then literally 2 months later, you sack him. You have to give him, I think it was £17 million in compensation, and you've got to give Sporting Lisbon about £13 million for Ruben Amorim. So £30 million we paid to get worse. It's completely illogical. And now they expect Ruben Amorim to work miracles with this team of players, which, let's be honest, were failing under Erik ten Hag anyway. And I'll be honest, I really did think that he would come in and we'd see a bit of a reaction from these players, but it's got worse. It's got a lot worse. The performances are worse. We're not scoring goals. We're conceding cheap goals. Like, we never used to concede as many corners and free kicks as we did now. And every team is now trying to score from corners against us. It's embarrassing. But yeah, I don't know. I don't really know. And just to be very, very clear, just so people understand, I'm not saying that I would sack Ruben Amorim. I'm not saying that by any stretch of the imagination. You know, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that based on how INEOS have acted so far, they pay £3 million for Dan Ashworth and then they sack him after 2 months. Like, I'm surprised they haven't sacked Ruben Amorim, because it has got worse. And they're going to be sat there this morning thinking, we're going to have to sell pretty much this whole squad and rebuild with a team that can play 3-4-2-1. Because with the current team, you're not going to be able to do it. But yeah, I can see someone in the chat saying, but you wanted to keep Ten Hag. I think Ten Hag was doing a better job than this. Ten Hag, I think, has been completely disrespected by this fan base. I think this fan base as a whole, right, are just... They don't show appreciation to people at all. I don't think. Ten Hag won us 2 trophies in 2 years. We hadn't won a trophy for 4 years before that. He got us 3rd place. Ruben Amorim's come in and we've lost, I think, 5 games in a row in the Premier League. I saw a stat this morning showing, because I always used to see people like, oh, look at all the records that Ten Hag's broken, you know, like it's a disgrace, and listing it off. I saw an infographic this morning on Twitter, and it showed all of the records that Ruben Amorim has broken since he's become the Manchester United manager. He's been here for 6 weeks, right? So already he's broken these records. Manchester United have not lost 3 consecutive Premier League home games since 1979. Ruben Amorim's just done that. Manchester United end 2024 in 14th position. They have not finished the year so badly in the table since 1988. So in like 40 years, sorry. Manchester United have lost 5 Premier League games in December. They have not lost this many games since 1962 in December. Manchester United have not lost 3 consecutive Premier League games without scoring since May 2015. We've just done that. Manchester United are the first Premier League team to lose 5 or more games in all competitions in 2 consecutive years in the month of December. Manchester United have not lost a home Premier League game against Newcastle since 2013, so 11 years since we last lost to Newcastle at home. Do you know what I mean? Like we're breaking records again. And it's obviously not for the right reasons either. So yeah, I think you've got to give criticism to everybody. You do. You have to give criticism. You know, we can't just sit here and say Ruben Amorim it has to be 100% protected. You know, he speaks well in the press conferences. He wears a nice coat. He's trendy. He's more trendy than Erik ten Hag. Like I genuinely see people on Twitter saying stuff like this. And their reasoning is that, oh, he wears a Moncler coat. Oh, he's one of us. You know, oh, he's more trendy than Erik ten Hag. And I'm just like sat there like, what have we become, you know? Just to be clear, I'm not saying sack him. That's not what I'm saying by any means. I'm just saying that we can throw all of the blame at the players, which is the main blame, and at the board and at INEOS and the Glazers. But you've also got to question why Ruben Amorim thought starting a midfield 2 of Eriksen and Casemiro against Bruno Guimaraes, Tonali and Joe Linton, and why he thought playing Dalot and Mazraoui as wing-backs when we haven't scored a single goal, right? This isn't a made-up fact. We've not scored a single goal when Dalot and Mazraoui have started. Not one. I mean, that's crazy, isn't it? So even me, as just somebody who watches football for fun, can look at that and say, well, the only time we've scored goals under Ruben Amorim was when Ahmad played as a wing-back. So surely Ahmad should play as a wing-back. Okay, let's put Ahmad there. I think Anthony, I think we've scored goals when Anthony's been the wing-back as well. You know, like we could have made different decisions yesterday. You know, you've got Garnacho sat on the bench. Why is he not playing? Why is Xerxes playing ahead of Garnacho? I don't get it. Is it because of, like Ruben Amorim said, is it because of the effort levels? I don't know. But I do just think some of his selections have been quite questionable so far, to be completely honest. Let's see what people are saying in the chat. Lightning says this manager needs to go back to wingers at wing back. Yeah, 100%. At the moment, we're playing a back 5 of all defenders, and we're still conceding goals. Somebody says, one last point. Everybody seems to forget that most of these players that were signed were Ten Hag's 2nd or 3rd choice options. Yeah, I think there's this whole obsession where it's like, oh, Erik ten Hag spent 600 million. It's his fault, blah, blah, blah. That's a really good point. Thank you for bringing that up, because I've seen so many people being like, it's Erik ten Hag's fault that we lost 5 games in a row. It's his fault. And it's like, what are you basing this on? And their argument would be, oh, well, he spent 600 million. And it's just completely a flawed argument. Because one, Erik ten Hag didn't do the negotiations. That was John Murtough and Richard Arnold, right? That's the starting point. And as somebody said in the chat, most of the players that he got given were 2nd and 3rd options. They weren't the number 1 options. Højlund, we wanted Harry Kane, and we got Højlund. Casemiro, we spent all summer negotiating for Frankie de Jong. We had a bid accepted, and then he rejected us, and then we went and spent 70 million on Casemiro because we panicked. Like, the big name players that he spent money on, Erik ten Hag supposedly, they weren't the 1st or 2nd choices. They were like the 3rd choices. And that falls on the board. That falls on John Murtough, Richard Arnold, the people who were actually responsible for carrying out the recruitment. You didn't see Erik ten Hag flying off to Barcelona to negotiate a deal for Frankie de Jong, did you? You saw him away on pre-season doing the training. It's John Murtough and Richard Arnold who went and did that. Spend a whole summer trying to buy his number one target and then end up with Casemiro on deadline day for £70 million. So you can blame Erik ten Hag for that. But I think that's kind of letting off the people who are actually at fault for why we are where we are now. And that is, of course, the board. It's poor recruitment. Obviously, some of Erik ten Hag's signings were terrible, like Anthony. That was awful. Who else did he sign? Onana. I think at the time everyone was quite excited about Onana, so I don't think it's fair to really criticise Onana. Mason Mount, from what I've heard, was a Glazer board signing. It wasn't an Erik ten Hag signing. Manuel Ugarte, apparently he didn't want him, but I think he's actually been quite decent, so fair enough there. Who else did he sign? I'm trying to have a look. Malacia, I mean, he was like 10 million, so you can't really complain. I don't think he's good enough, but yeah. Who else did he sign? Martinez. I think Martinez, the first season was amazing, and then he got injured, and he's been pretty terrible since then. So I just keep seeing this narrative floating around that it's all Erik ten Hag's fault. It's Erik ten Hag's fault, and I just think it's a pretty flawed argument, to be honest. And it's just blaming somebody else. People don't want to have this real tough conversation, an honest conversation. They'd rather just blame Erik ten Hag, which is just like, what? So when Ruben Amorim gets sacked, are you going to blame Ruben Amorim? Is that how it works? You know, it's not a very yeah. Let's see what else people are saying in the chat. I mean, if you want to play the blame game, the people whose fault it is the people who have in the upper management of the club, you know, the John Murtaughs, the Richard Arnolds. They're not here anymore, but those are the people who are at fault. The Glazers, Ed Woodward, like over the last decade, they're the ones who have assembled this £1 billion woeful team. They're at fault. They're the ones who sack managers, Willie, you know, for you know. Romano says, if you think about it, Kieran, Casemiro and Eriksen are the only experienced players we have. That's why we started them. I don't think that's true. Matthias de Ligt played for Juventus. He's played for Bayern Munich. Martinez has won a World Cup. Mazraoui's played for Bayern for a long time. Onana played in a Champions League final. I don't think you can say that Eriksen and Casemiro are the only experienced players. Harry Maguire's played at international level for a long time. I would say, yeah, I don't think that's a fair argument to say that Eriksen and Casemiro should start just because they're experienced and that because we don't have any other experienced players, because that's not true. De Ligt, Maguire, Martinez, Onana, Mazraoui, like they're all experienced players. The only young players who played yesterday was Xerxes, Højlund and Ahmad. Dallow's like 26 now. He's been around a long time. He's the first team player for Portugal. So I don't think we can play on this whole argument where we've got a young team and blah, blah, blah. Yesterday wasn't a young team. Maguire's, 31? Eriksen's 32. Casemiro's 32, I think. It's not like we had Lenny Yoro, Toby Collier, etc., in the team. It was some of the more older players playing yesterday. And somebody else says as well, don't forget that Eriksen and Johnny Evans were free transfers. So yeah, that's fair. I mean, let's be honest. In the last decade, the only player that's come to Manchester United that we've signed and that has been a success is Bruno, realistically. Literally. Name me one other player in the last 10 years who's come to Manchester United and been a success. Ed Milson says, how do we solve this problem? Would you go back to a 4-2-3-1? I think if he goes back to a 4-2-3-1, then I'm going to say this now, right? And people can take this whatever way they want. If he goes back to a 4-2-3-1, we may as well have just kept Erik ten Hag. Like, what's the point? The whole point of bringing in a new manager is bringing in a manager with a new system, new tactics, new ideas, and to implement it. So if he suddenly decides that he's going to go to a back four, then sacking Ten Hag and spending 30 million on compensation, etc., was pointless. He has to try and make it work. He has to just keep doing it and doing it and doing it. Will it work? I don't know. But I said that at the beginning, right? People will say, oh, you're being reactionary. I said at the beginning, oh, I'm excited about Ruben Amorim, but I'm not convinced that it's going to work. This was before we'd even kicked a ball under him, you know? So my stance hasn't changed from watching the last 6 weeks worth of games. I'm just as unsure now as I was then. So, yeah. Right, let's talk about Casemiro really quickly before I wrap up the video. So the news this morning is that apparently Al Nassr want to sign Casemiro. This is coming out from multiple different people today. It says Casemiro wants to move to Saudi in January. The Saudi Sovereign Wealth Fund are determined to move forward with his signing in January and want him to play for Al Nassr. Hopefully this happens. I mean, that would be a great starting point. If we got rid of Casemiro and Rashford in January, that would be, I think, £700,000 a week in wages saved. If you say got 20 for Casemiro and 20 to 30 for Rashford, 50 million in the bank, 700 grand a week of wages saved. That should then allow us to go and spend some money, go and buy a left wing back, go and buy a right wing back. Yeah, so we'll wait and see what happens with that one. But the window opens tomorrow. Yeah, I'm going to wrap the video up here, guys. Have a great day, everybody. Speak to you all very, very soon. Don't forget to drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe. This has been Daily Red Devil, and I'll speak to you all later. Bye-bye.